What's up, everybody? My name is Shannon, and I am still waiting for my Satyr, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. So I'm not going to go super in-depth to specific plot points. If you want more of that, you'll have to listen to my new podcast, Lipstick and Lightsabers, where Alex and I will be discussing this book a little bit more in-depth. But the biggest takeaway from this book, and here's the thing, this book is the first new canon novel to take place before The Phantom Menace, and it's all about Qui-Gon Jinn, it's all about his relationship with Obi-Wan. So naturally you would think, what is this going to have to do with the future of Star Wars? Well, I'm here to tell you a whole heck of a whole lot. Wow, it's absolutely insane. This book is about prophecies, and we get so many prophecies, including an extended version of the Chosen One prophecy and a couple little tidbits here and there that I had never heard before, and I'm like, oh my god. So, if any of you guys haven't watched this little teaser, for this little movie coming out in December called The Rise of Skywalker, you might want to go do that, because in that teaser, we hear Palpatine's laugh. And I was at Star Wars Celebration, so when I saw Ian McDiarmid walk out onto that stage and say, "Roll it again," I just about died. So Palpatine is coming back for episode 9. He's gonna be the big bad. But how could this be, do you say? Well, this book right here really shows us that this has been a thing for a very long time. This has been planned. This has been set up. Palpatine has been the Phantom Menace since episode 1. He still is in episode 9. There are prophecies in this book that could just be about Anakin being the chosen one, all of that getting wrapped up in Return of the Jedi. But now that we know this, and now that we know that The Rise of Skywalker is the end of a 9-part saga, you can look at these prophecies and you're like, oh my god, it's still happening. It still hasn't wrapped up yet. There are things about the evil that was vanquished coming back again when the righteous lose a light. There are lines about how through their greatest student, you will learn to rise again. All of this insaneness, and it all ties back into Palpatine coming back in episode 9, and to him just being the big bad for the entire trilogy. And that has so many insane implications, and it absolutely blows my mind. Because of that, regardless if you want to read this book or not, and regardless of you watching this video about everything you need to know about it, I do highly recommend that you check it out, or at least skim through it for those prophecies, because it really does give you a lot to think about. But what's really interesting is Qui-Gon's interest in them. So Qui-Gon was the apprentice of Count Dooku, and in this book we get some flashbacks to that time. And Dooku was very obsessed with this one holocron that was just full of prophecies, and he would listen to it and go through it all the time. And his apprentice before Qui-Gon, Rael Averross, is the one who introduces Qui-Gon to these prophecies, and he becomes very engrossed in them as well, to the point when Dooku actually tells him to stop reading them and kind of hoards them all for himself. So you're kind of starting to see his fall to the dark side just a little bit there. I have a feeling that's going to be explored a lot more in the new audiobook coming out, which is coming out probably by the time that you're watching this video. So that's gonna have some very interesting tie-ins there. But Qui-Gon becomes very obsessed with the idea of these prophecies. And the thing with them is that we know that this thirst for power leads to the dark side. So wanting to control the future is a thirst for power that leads to the dark side. That's something that Qui-Gon is warned against when looking up these prophecies. But that's not really why he wants them. That's not really why he's looking into them. He just is so curious about them. He just wants to see what's going on. And in this book, one of the prophecies comes true, and it's that when the Kyber that is not Kyber shines forth, the time of prophecy will be at hand. So in this book, we are on a planet called Pajal. There is a lot going on here, but we do have a little subplot with some jewel thieves going on, Pax and Rahara, who, by the way, they are definitely OTP. They're great, but they're here because they think that they have found a cache of Kyber crystals, and they find out that it's actually not Kyber crystals. They're more Fool's Kyber. They look very, very similar, but they don't power lightsabers. They don't really work that way, all of that kinds of stuff. And we find out later that this group called the Blackguards, who have been working to sabotage the treaty agreements to create this new hyperspace lane for this planet, have been using these crystals to create shields that make them impenetrable to lightsabers. And Qui-Gon gets this flash of insight when he learns this, and he's like, This is the Kyber that's not Kyber. We have entered the time of prophecies. So all of the prophecies, the Chosen One prophecy, everything starts here. This is where it all gets started. And then he finds the Chosen One a few years later in the Phantom Menace, but we're still seeing that prophecy acted out all the way to episode 9, and it's crazy and it's blowing my mind. It's just so unbelievably cool. We also learn a lot in this book kind of about how the Jedi Order are operating, but more specifically how they train their Padawans. So we have a new character introduced in this book named Rael. He was Dooku's former apprentice before Qui-Gon. He introduced Qui-Gon to all those prophecies, all that kinds of stuff. He is a very different type of Jedi because he was actually found and brought into the Order when he was 5 years old, which is considered way too old. And what happened was Rael remembers his home. He remembers his family. So he was not growing up in the Jedi Order believing that the Jedi Order in the temple was his family, because he has a family that he remembers. And that makes him very defiant, and it makes him very rebellious. He refuses to give up his accent. He refuses to stop dressing the way that he does. It makes him very hard to control, and that results in a lot of heartache and a lot of tragedy for this character later on. It was absolutely brilliant that Claudia Gray wrote this character in, because he makes it so much easier to understand Obi-Wan's character. But if 5 years old is too old to be inducted into the Jedi, then 10 years old is definitely way too old to be inducted into the Jedi, which is what happens to Anakin. And here's the thing. If Qui-Gon had survived and he had been the one to train Anakin, then things might have turned out a little bit differently. But he doesn't. Instead, he gets stuck with Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan was created to be the perfect Jedi. We learned this from Yoda. So what happened was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they're not the best master and apprentice. They're not really matched super well. They kind of think things like, very differently. They just don't really click. Qui-Gon is very rebellious. He's very much like, okay, I see your rules, but I'm also going to do this kind of my way, whereas Obi-Wan is a very by the books type of Jedi. Yoda saw this and paired them together because young Padawans rebel. Young people rebel. That's just kind of what happens. So if you were to stick a Padawan with somebody who was already a rebel, then to rebel, that would turn you into the perfect Jedi. Personally, that does not sit super well with me, and we see the repercussions of that. We see how Obi-Wan is very much the perfect Jedi. He is very in step with the Jedi Order, and it does make him not super equipped to train Anakin. It doesn't make him super sympathetic to Anakin. They do become amazing friends. It just doesn't work out the best way that it could have, and that's very interesting when you look at it that way. There's a lot of different things that you could kind of pull out of that. It's very fascinating. So overall, if you haven't read this book, or if you were thinking about it at all, definitely go and do it. I didn't really spoil a whole lot for you, just how it's going to tie into episode 9, but there are a lot of things here, and I think this is definitely a very big book to read before you watch The Rise of Skywalker. And even reading this book and then rewatching the entire series, it's going to add so many new insights and so many new takes. And it's just, Claudia Gray is a queen, amazing. Everything that she touches turns to gold. But please let me know all of your thoughts about this book down in the comments down below. If I missed anything that you think is important, please fill in the blanks down there as well. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe so you can talk books with me every week. That is everything I got for you today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!